So if you imagine your lifespan is the length of time it takes you to drive a race car from point A to point B, where point B is driving it off a cliff. And you have 2 feet and 2 pedals, right? So you have the accelerator and you have the brake. And your feet are always on both pedals. So it's really just a question of how hard are you pressing on each one? Now, in this analogy, there's never a point when the car is not moving towards the edge of the cliff. But you can do things that really speed up the drive, which means you're moving towards death more quickly. And obviously that would mean you're pressing much more on the throttle than you are on the brake. Conversely, you could have minimal pressure on the throttle and much more pressure on the brake and really slow your forward progress. So then the question becomes, what are the factors that you could be doing that accelerate the drive towards the cliff? And what are the things that you can be doing that slow that trajectory? So some of those things are kind of, not under your control. So LP little a is not under your control. So LP little a is just a low level of maintenance throttle that is put on the pedal. So somebody who's born with a low LP little a has a very low throttle application. Someone who's born with a high LP little a would have a higher throttle application. So we would just call this sort of baseline maintenance throttle. Now, your ApoB is also going to be a part of that. So the question is, do you do things that lower ApoB? Obviously, there's dietary things that do so, but if we're really talking about reducing ApoB to the levels that we call physiologic, that's really going to be the application of pharmacotherapy. So that would be kind of pressing much harder on the brake. The more you're lowering ApoB, the harder you're pushing on the brake. If a person has, for example, type 2 diabetes, which we'll talk about in a second, that is generally accompanied by hyperinsulinemia. Well, what is hyperinsulinemia doing in this equation? It is pressing harder on the throttle. It is accelerating through mechanisms like upregulation of ApoC3 expression, which regulates ApoB in the wrong direction, right? So more ApoC3 means more ApoB. It impacts the LDL receptor, the LDL receptor-related protein. It moves all of these things in the wrong direction. So insulin is basically changing the amount of LDL particle that you have in circulation. So anyway, I don't know. I guess I could build that out a little bit more. Obviously, smoking, what would that be? Smoking is hammering on the throttle, right? Having high blood pressure and lowering high blood pressure. Those are really the big things. So what are the big 3 things that are driving ASCVD? Smoking, hypertension, ApoB. And then, of course, you have other things like LP little a, hyperinsulinemia. So I guess that would be my analogy, right? Which is, we have a car that we can't actually stop, but we can really slow it down to a dull roar. And that's going to be through some combination of manipulating the brake and the throttle.